Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to Health Matters on link.astrawani.com. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for this live webinar. Our topic today is Get That Baby Tips on Trying to Conceive, TTC. So, I will not be the only one here. I have a wonderful co-moderator joining me today. Her name is Dr. Sandra Raman with over 500,000 followers on TikTok. So, korang tak follow TikTok dia, please pergi follow TikTok dia. Dr. Sandra is known for health-based content, which she explains very easily, senang kita orang semua nak faham, and in a fun way, and which teaches the viewers about health and wellness issues. So Dr. Sandra, siapa kita punya panelis hari ini?
Hai, selamat petang you all semua. Okey, dah hampa dah makan belum? Okey, jom kita nak tengok topik hari ni macam Mr. Dishan Kumar dah bagi tahu tadi. Panelis kita orang bawa special untuk you all semua. Dr. Nur Azlin, beliau adalah fertility specialist daripada Sophia Fertility Center. Beliau juga ada rawat beberapa selebriti yang terkenal jugalah. Okey, jangan segan ya. Jom kita tengok Dr. Azlin pula.
Hi, Assalamualaikum.
Hi, Dr. Azlin.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight.
Okay.
Best pula dengar you cakap utara ni, Sandra. Dulu I sekolah dekat Taiping. So, banyak orang utara.
I see. Yang ni semua curi-curi sikit je lah.
So, to our participant, siapa-siapa nak tanya soalan, so ini live webinar, so you guys boleh tanya soalan. Tanya dekat chat box bukan dekat Q&A So kita ada chat box. Boleh tanya any questions you guys have. So kita ada flow kita, apa kita nak discuss, we have a lot of topics. But if you guys have any questions, please ask us and kita akan cuba jawab. Kita akan try Dr. Azlin to jawab the questions. I tak tahu whether it's 1 hour the live webinar. So hopefully we can answer all your questions. Okay? Dr. Azlin ready? Dr. Sandra ready?
Alright, let's go.
Okay, so let's start. First question, Dr. Azlin.
Yes.
What are the first steps a couple should take when dorang dah decide dorang nak have a baby?
Firstly, obviously, kalau nak pregnancy, you have to plan whether you are ready in terms of, sebab, having a baby is a big commitment. So, you nak plan, you have enough time, siapa nak jaga baby you, the cost of having a baby, pampers and all those. So kalau dah ready, I think the best actually kan, kadang-kadang ada orang dia kata dah ready nak have a baby dan dia terus try lah on its own, on their own. Tapi I think actually paling better kalau diorang datang just having we call it a preconceptional check lah, preconceptual check ataupun check pra kehamilan. Maksudnya just make sure tak ada problem. Doktor kata you are okay, then you can try on your own. Macam itulah. Sebab kalau kita detect problem dari awal, lagi better lah.
Apa yang you guys akan check kalau preconception check tu?
First kita tanya sejarah lah. Kalau ada sejarah masalah kesihatan apa-apa ke kan. Macam orang memang kadang-kadang memang ada like people born with diabetes lah, or some people memang eventually ada diabetes. So gula kena kawal dengan lebih baik. Sebabnya bila orang diabetes tak kawal gula, dia punya fertility might be affected. Secondly, the diabetes itself will affect the pregnancy, so risk of miscarriage, risk of early delivery, baby actually meninggal dalam perut, so banyak problem. So you want to optimize the sugar control before you get pregnant. Ada orang ada high blood pressure, so kena makan ubat. So kalau lagi better dia punya control, lagi chances nak berjaya in pregnancy lagi better. Ada orang ada epilepsi dari kecil, so dia makan ubat. So certain ubat tak sesuai in pregnancy, so kena tukar jenis ubat, that kind of thing.
So kalau tukar ubat and everything, doktor yang akan prescribe ubat baru ke doktor akan
bukan. Basically bila kita assess, berarti kata I think you need to optimize your control. Nanti doktor, saya akan buat referral lah kepada doktor yang jaga kencing manis, jaga diabetes, or jaga epilepsi. And ada orang yang memang tak sesuai nak pregnant pun. Sebab macam katalah ada orang ni dia memang ada kidney failure, right? So kidney failure, ada orang memang kidney dia tak boleh process all the toxin from the body, so dia perlu dialysis. Okay, so dia kena pergi cuci darah. So kalau dia pregnant, nanti dia punya, sebab bila kita pregnant, kita punya blood volume tu bertambah. Sudah ada kiranya macam ada dua body kan for that kidney to process. So most people on dialysis tak sesuai lah nak pregnant because it can make their kidney worsening function yang boleh life threatening. Ada orang memang lahir dengan what you call it, congenital heart disease. Maksudnya dia lahir dengan abnormal heart dia tak boleh function 100%. So kalau dia ada baby nanti, bila ada baby the heart have to work harder, tak sesuai. So benda-benda macam tu lah. So kalau macam tak ada optimization, kita akan refer to dia ada doktor punya specialist untuk control, dan baru kita kata okay, you can try. Secondly, kita akan check, usually better to scan lah. So bila kita scan, kita boleh nampak rahim, nampak okay, kita boleh nampak telur, nampak okay. Lepas tu nak check sperm, make sure period dia regular. So kalau ada orang period tak regular, that means dia punya chances nak pregnant tu a bit low. So kita kena bagi fertility treatment as soon as possible lah. Tapi kalau memang semua nampak macam okay je, then tak apalah, go and try yourself. Dan kita bagi tahu when's the fertile window, that kind of thing. Nanti they go and try, tak berjaya, dan baru datang balik.
Okay, doktor, kita ada soalan already. Baru start berapa minit dah ada soalan. Okay, from Linda Jo. She says, hi, good evening. Sekarang saya diberi ubat medroxyprogesterone acetate. Bolehkah saya mengandung ketika mengambil ubat ini?
First nak tahu ubat tu. Ubat tu actually is called Provera. Nama lain dia lah. And dia digunakan, it's a progesterone. Dia digunakan untuk banyak benda. Kadang-kadang untuk control bleeding. Kadang-kadang ada orang bila ambil ubat ni, dia tak keluar, dia punya telur tak membesar dengan baik. So usually susah sikit lah. So dia kena konteks what is the context of the ubat being used for. Macam tu lah.
Okay.
So yang tu susah, I don't know the background, sebab susah nak jawab.
I see. Okay. No problem. So Dr. Sandra, okay, Dr. Sandra is some influencer, health influencer. So Dr. Sandra, what do you think is something that you feel is important bila couples nak macam start buat TTC? Apa Dr. Sandra rasa? Apa yang penting?
Okay, to be very honest, I think you guys saw the list just now, yeah? Okay, the list that Dr. Azlin gave us. Okay, I totally agree with the checklist. Okay, sebab you see, sebelum kita nak mengandung tu, you should have the checklist. Okay, what do you want to do and all those kind of things. And yeah, ada pampers ke tak? That's something very, very penting. Okay.
Mahal pampers.
Pampers mahal, alright. Okay, tapi yang nombor 9 tu, I don't know you all nampak tak? Yang tu je mata saya nampak. Get busy. Okay. Kenapa saya kata get busy? Okay, so what that actually means is get busy. Okay, kenapa I bagi tahu you all satu cerita? I ada seorang couple yang dah kahwin maybe 2 tahun. Okay, lepas tu datang sebab initial check up lah. Okay, sebab tak mengandung lagi, right? Tanya soalan, tahu tak? Problem actually lie dekat mana? Okay, get busy sekali sebulan. Hampa nak mengandung sekali sebulan tu macam mana? Okay, so nowadays lifestyle actually, to be very honest, everybody is so exhausted. Ramai yang fikir especially awal kahwin pun ramai yang fikir macam, kita balik malam ni ada something ongoing macam tu. It doesn't. Most of the time dia balik rumah, you are tired, your husband is tired. Okay, even guys, the misconception kat sini adalah kalau lelaki letih pun dia boleh buat je. So nombor 9 tu sangat penting, get busy. So as a GP, I would say that's the first thing you should look at.
Okay, Dr. Azlin, let's move on to macam let's say get busy tu alright. So let's say macam sekarang kita couples dah make a decision, diorang sebenarnya nak buat baby, and then what is the next step, macam what kind of prep diorang kena buat. And prep tu bukan saja bukan saja perempuan saja, bukan saja wife saja, husband pun kena ada prep kan?
Betul. So basically they both have to motivate each other, both have to have the preparation. So bila kita nak exam pun kita nak prepare, kita nak baca buku, so nak berjaya in exam. So having a baby pun lebih kurang macam exam, because it's not like you start, you kata you nak ada baby, you terus dapat. No, because it's not as easy as going to the shop, get your things and balik. So dia macam banyak benda have to jadi in your body before you get pregnant. So first and foremost, you have to look at your lifestyle. Okay? Bila you decide to have a baby, so your lifestyle kalau boleh have to adopt like the most healthiest lifestyle that have ever been in your life. Okay? Sebabnya it matters. So what you eat matters. Okay? So pemakanan sangat penting. Pemakanan yang seimbang. So pemakanan yang seimbang bukan nasi 2 pinggan. So carbohydrate sangat carbohydrate dia jadi gula dalam badan. So gula actually affect your fertility, actually makes your fertility down. So your diet has to be high protein diet. So protein should be good protein, lean protein, chicken, fish like that. Lepas tu fish pun kalau boleh stick to smaller fish, but big fish they carry mercury poisoning, which is not good. And lots of vegetable. Kiranya kalau satu pinggan tu half tu is just vegetable. So the more colourful the vegetable, the better. Sebab this one penuh dengan vitamins, penuh dengan antioxidants, so they are good for your egg, they are good for your sperm. Then basically your carbo or your nasi is suku pinggan, and then your lauk, your protein suku pinggan. And then diet dah. Lepas tu exercise. Exercise is very important. Tapi exercise tu very important, you have to, ada orang dia macam okay exercise, I have to exercise, so I have to go run every day 1 hour. Tak boleh juga, dia kena macam moderate exercise, like 3 to 4 times 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes a time macam tu. Tak everyday. So kalau macam too much exercise juga, macam katalah everyday strenuous 2 hours at the gym or 2 hours running or marathon running, dia boleh affect your fertility, dia boleh affect your ovulation, dia boleh affect your sperm juga. Sebab ada patient yang suka, the husband yang marathon runner, memang pergi fly all over the world, pergi lari sana lari sini, so the sperm is affected. So eventually I cakap, I think maybe you have to cut down lah your running, sebab when you run for 4 hours, your body temperature goes up. So body temperature goes up, then the sperm count will go down.
Talking about that, Dr. Azlin, like now kan banyak orang kan sekarang like to go cycling. It's a new trend, nak pergi cycling and everything. So cycling tu akan effect ke?
Yeah, cycling akan effect definitely. Sebab cycling, first you pakai cycling short kan, dia panas, kurang ventilation. Then you sit on that chair, it's pressing on your on your testicles. Then you kayuh for 4 hours, then your body temperature goes up. So all these factors will affect the sperm count lah. So cycling or biking, macam orang naik motor besar-besar tu 4 hours, 5 hours, that can affect. Even lorry drivers pun boleh effect sebab dia duduk lama. Long distance lorry drivers kan yang like KL, pergi Johor, pergi Penang, lama pun not so good. So this kind of lifestyle memang kenalah. So eventually talking back to my patient yang marathon runner tu kan, last year kan macam when we got COVID outbreak, right? So there's like you cannot travel anymore, you cannot run so much. So dia conceive tau, dapat dah baby dia. Dah bersalin.
Because changing the lifestyle kan?
Yeah, very important. Lifestyle, so food, exercise, supplement. Supplement is very important sebab supplement, especially kalau macam orang kata dah pregnant baru makan folic acid, natural fact tak. Sebelum pregnant dah kena makan folic acid sebab bila once you conceive tu, folic acid dah kena ada cukup dalam badan you. Sebabnya kalau kurang, especially bila for ladies, dia boleh affect baby punya formation. So kalau tak cukup folic acid, you boleh dapat abnormal pregnancy, you boleh dapat baby yang ada problem with dia punya spinal cord. So you are encouraged to take folic acid as soon as you decide to TTC. Folic acid is important for husband juga, actually for sperm punya quality, sperm punya quantity.
Husband also should take folic acid?
Yeah. So kalau ada suplemen yang memang untuk sperm, dia akan ada folic acid kat dalam tu.
Okay.
So sebab in the market there's many like preconceptional punya vitamins, so for husband, for wife, so all the things dah ada kat dalam tu lah.
So Dr. Sandra, do you have any like experience orang datang cakap apa prep saya kena buat, and as a GP what do you think about that?
I think it's good. I think because the first line doctors yang you guys akan jumpa adalah GP, okay? So like GPs akan guide you dulu daripada semua yang Dr. Azlin ajar tadi, okay? Tapi banyak yang saya dapat tu, okay, bila kita sentuh je bab makanan, sentuh bab exercise tu semua dah tak nak dengar.
Susah,
Okay,
susah,
everybody
give up.
want yes, everybody wants to just hear the solution. Okay, tapi yang Dr. Azlin explain ni itu adalah solution you all juga. Okay, before kita proceed kepada rawatan, okay, which means that supplement. Actually, I think maybe I can say 95% okay, orang kalau kita kata folic acid tu laki kena makan, memang tak percaya. Patient saya kalau datang untuk fertility memang saya bagi folic acid kat wanita, kat wife dengan husband, and then the guy will be like, what? Saya makan folic acid tu vitamin wanita, doktor. Saya tak nak jadi wanita. Okay, like that. So as a GP kita atau your family doctor ya, okay, untuk yang biasa tak tahu perkataan GP tu, kita kata pengamal perubatan am anda, okay. So bila anda berjumpa dengan dia, dia akan adjust your diet, dia akan kira anda punya BMI, dia akan check pemakanan anda macam mana. Lepas tu makanan proses anda, betapa banyak anda makan, then daripada schedule anda, okay, then kalau perlu benda ni semua dah scan, dah buat suplemen, dah makan semua, baru kita refer kepada fertility specialist.
Lepas tu bila GP screen, dia macam important juga nak tahu macam menstrual cycle, kitaran haid tu. So kalau kitaran haid dia normal, every month datang period, that means telur dia besar okay, then dia boleh go try on their own lah. Tapi kalau memang dia punya daripada awal dia punya kitaran haid dah tak normal, dan dah kena check up, dah kena check hormon, dah kena scan, dan sometimes kena jumpa gynae already lah, or even better fertility specialist lah.
Okay, alright, let's move on. Kita sebenarnya ada banyak soalan, kita try jawab soalan as we go on. So Dr. Azlin, did we cover everything in preparation men and women?
So I nak cakap specifically for supplements lah, sebab banyak patient tanya, doktor apa benda kena makan, okay. So in terms of diet, dia healthy eating je lah, sebab ada patient akan tanya apa special diet doktor. Ada orang patient kata hari-hari saya minum susu kambing, jus buah pomegranate
Delima.
Delima, lepas tu kiwi, lepas tu apa benda lah dia mix. Basically whatever yang you all makan tu, so long as dia bukan jamu, bukan herbs, is fine. You can try whatever. Tapi nak kata whether it memang definitely akan improve fertility, I wouldn't know, sebab kita punya medical practice depends on evidence-based medicine. Maksudnya dia orang buat kajian, dia kata yes, this works. So tak adalah kajian kata you kena makan telur ayam kampung 5 biji sehari, tak ada lagi. So but since if it's not detrimental to the health, fine, you can try. Tapi suplemen yang important, folic acid, vitamin D is good. So vitamin D is made by sun exposure. Tapi kita Malaysian tak suka sun, sebab kita semua nak white, fair complexion. So majority kalau kita check vitamin D level memang low. So you can take vitamin D supplement about 1000 IU per day. The other thing yang good is antioxidant called coenzyme Q10. So this supplement is very important for egg quality and also for sperm quality. Okay. For men, folic acid, zinc, selenium, they are important for sperm production, and coenzyme Q10. Lepas tu ada orang tanya, boleh ke makan vitamin C? Boleh. Boleh ke makan vitamin E? Boleh. Okay. Apa yang tak boleh makan? Herbs. Ada orang macam makan, okay, ni jus kacip Fatimah lah, jus ginseng lah, Chinese punya ubat sengseng. Sebab basically these are all made from herbs. Herbs contain phytoestrogen or plant hormones that when you go into your body, dia akan macam kadang-kadang effect negatively onto your you punya fertility. So better not lah.
Okay. What about for guys preparation tu, what about masturbation?
What about masturbation? Okay.
So should guys like stop doing it when they were trying to get pregnant, or how does that actually affect?
Yelah, you have to be getting busy with your wife, bukan getting busy with yourself.
Does it like increase sperm count or does it decrease sperm count ke macam mana?
Not really. Actually, kalau you regularly ejaculate, right, regardless lah with intercourse ke with masturbation, memanglah daily masturbation the quantity will drop, but then the quality or the movement or the motility of the sperm tu gets better. So even though the quantity is low, The movement is faster, so when the sperm move faster, they can move faster into the womb, into the egg lah. Macam tu.
Okay. Let's move on. Doctor, let's talk about macam nowadays how people can get their fertility window confused. That fertility window, certain people dorang macam I don't know what day I should do it or where is my fertility window right at, and then mungkin kita boleh move on to myths, benda-benda yang kita dengar, yang orang cakap ada dengar dari sini, ada dengar dari sana, yang tak betul masa kita nak try to conceive.
First kita kena tahu macam mana nak kira fertility window. So fertility window only works kalau you punya cycle is regular. Cycle means kitaran haid means hari pertama kitaran haid bermula bila period you start. So day 1 of your cycle is bila you start bleeding. Bukan bila baru habis period. Ada orang kata, okay doktor, saya dah habis period dah 7 hari, so hari yang ke-8 tu dikira day 1. So dan dia dah salah kira lah. So it has to start from the beginning, which is the day you start bleeding. Then you go forward. So macam dalam gambar ni, katalah somebody, kalau dia punya period, everybody taklah period dia macam every month ada 28 days. So kitaran haid is when you kira one day forward daripada start bleeding sampai the next period tu. So katalah period tu sini, then you go forward after 28 days you ada another period. So people usually dalam 28 to 30 days. So the first half of the kitaran haid ialah proses pembesaran telur. So masa pembesaran telur ni, lain orang kadang-kadang rate dia lain. So the first half tu dia punya boleh berbeza-beza. Tapi once telur dah keluar, after 14 days period you akan datang. So untuk kira kitaran haid you track lah you punya kitaran haid for the next 3-4 months. Then you cari kitaran haid you yang paling pendek. Katalah yang paling pendek 28 days, so you minus 14. So from day 14 you dah fertile. Or then you punya kitaran haid yang paling panjang is 35 days. So then you punya fertile window is between day 14 sampai day 21. Tapi kalau nak kata bersama daripada day 14 sampai day 21, that's like how many days? So many days, takkanlah as Sandra cakap tadi, like balik kerja pun dah tak larat dah, whatever, once a month je boleh, takkanlah nak everyday. So tak macam tak boleh orang lakukan like that lah. So what you do is bila the sperm is inside the body, dia boleh hidup lama, dia boleh hidup 3 hari. Okay, so you can space out lah, you can try every other day. Macam dalam gambar ni, katalah kita target ovulation day 14, so you can start lah day 11, day 13, day 15. Kalau macam kitaran haid you berubah-ubah between 26 to 35 tu, you start lah daripada day 11, day 13, 15, 17, 19, 23. Macam tu lah, day 23.
Okay.
Macam tu lah.
Okay.
Lebih kurang.
Okay, just before we continue, Doktor, I just nak tahu hari ni kita punya audience is banyak lelaki ke banyak perempuan? So everyone in the audience, if you guys let us know in the chat box, is it guys more in the audience, in the participant, ke ladies more? So jawab L untuk lelaki, P untuk perempuan. Make sure you letak setting to panelists and to attendees. So just for us to find out, kita ni sebenarnya banyak perempuan ke nak tahu ke? Actually guys pun nak tahu sebenarnya. Okay, Dr. Sandra, you can continue with your myths to TTC.
Okay, alright. So Dr. Hazlin, saya paling banyak dengar mitos ni, ramai ni nak dapatkan twins lah. Rasanya mereka tak buat checklist ni kot. Okay, kalau ada twins tu bukan sekadar comel je. Dia perlu double first. Okay, so makan pisang yang twin. Okay, dapat twin. Betul ke?
Oh, kalau macam tu senang. Actually, I tak buka kedai, I tak buka klinik. Makan twin, makan pisang je. Actually tak. So, macam mana nak kata? First and foremost, doktor akan kata twin tu is actually very high risk. Okay, so untuk doktor, risk, twin tu bukan bonus lah. Twin tu is actually a disadvantage, is a risk. Sebab twin is higher risk of miscarriage. Maksudnya you gugur lagi senang nak gugur. Gugur kadang-kadang gugur lambat. Gugur katalah dah 5 bulan dah you dah pregnant. You dah pergi check banyak kali dah. You dah scan, you dah nampak baby you on the screen tu so many times. So then you gugur. Kenapa gugur awal tu, gugur lambat tu? Sebabnya rahim tu bila ada satu baby je, dia punya growth rate tu a bit slower. Tapi bila ada 2 baby, so dia kena expand faster, right? Dia kena expand faster to accommodate the 2 baby. So bila dia expand faster, so rahim tu kadang-kadang tak tahu dalam tu ada 1 baby ke ada 2 baby. Dia kata, oh dah cukup besar dah ni, dah boleh keluarkan baby ni. Dia pun contract dan keluarkan. So that's why you akan gugur lagi senang, you boleh bersalin awal lagi senang.
So dengar guys benda ni
so
mitos.
First kita tak galakkan lah twin, tapi kalau dah jadi tu jadilah. Tapi obviously memang makan pisang tak boleh. Sebabnya twin tu, okay, dia ada 2 jenis twin. Satu twin ialah kembar seiras, right? Kembar seiras, dia datang daripada satu telur, satu sperm jumpa jadi satu embrio dan embrio tu terpecah 2. So dia daripada satu acuan dia pecah 2, so dua-dua sama je semua. Ada kembar tak seiras is actually 2 telur, 2 sperm. So 2 embrio dan jadi. So kembar tak seiras a bit susah juga nak jadi sebab secara semula jadi badan kita besarkan satu telur je sebulan. Okay? Orang selalu kembar tak seiras ialah bila dia ambil ubat fertility lah. Ambil macam ubat subur, so 2 telur membesar 1 bulan. Atau dia buat IUI, so kita bagi ubat so lebih daripada 1 telur membesar. Orang buat IVF, so dia letak 2 embrio untuk improve chance dia pregnant. So jadilah 2 tentu.
Okay, Dr. Sandra, next meet. But before that, thank you untuk kita punya participant untuk jawab. Actually kalau I tengok a lot of women sebenarnya, tapi ada juga couples yang join kita punya session. So thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, couple better lah. I think both understand the issues of each other.
Yeah, because it's not only one person going through, it's 2
exactly. It takes 2 to tango.
Yeah.
Yeah, thumbs up to the couple sebab saya selalu remind patient-patient saya, okay, even though most of the time the ladies are the ones here, remind you guys, okay, bila nak pergi check up tu kena laki dengan perempuan tu tepuk tangan tu kena ada 2 baru ada bunyi. Okay, so must be 2 people lah untuk datang untuk check up. Okay, next meet. Pakai seluar ketat-ketat untuk husband dia lah. Okay, right. Mengurangkan sperma ataupun kualiti sperma. Okay. So saya rasa yang tu bukan mitos, memang betul lah sebab Dr. Azlin dah kata tadi. Okay, so dia meningkatkan suhu badan kita. Okay, so indirectly dengan directly dia memang cause kita punya sperm quality tu jadi kurang lah. Okay, next apa lagi?
Position. Banyak patient tanya saya, position macam mana doktor? Nak kena macam ni. Actually dari segi saintifik kan, diorang dah buatlah kajian. So tak ada. So bila patient tanya saya kata ikut cita rasa. Whatever floats your boat. And then tanya kena ke mengiring belah kiri, mengiring belah kanan, kena ke angkat kaki sebab diorang akan macam ni, lepas tu letak bantal bawah punggung, angkat kaki, all this. So macam so tengok macam gambar tu macam-macam position. Kena ke buat headstand ke? Actually tak kisah actually. Tak kisah. Sebabnya sperm tu tahu je nak pergi ikut mana. Dia tak adalah confused kalau you bangun ke berdiri dia tak confused. Lagi satu orang selalu tanya, doktor saya lepas bersama tu, lepas tu dia keluar balik lah doktor. Macam mana doktor, macam nak simpan dia kat dalam. So I kata tak apa, yang keluar tu ialah semen, which is air mani. So dalam air mani tu ada sperm dia dah jalan, dah masuk dalam rahim. Yang keluar tu air dia saja. Macam you imagine kalau bawa kereta, dalam kereta ada passenger. So passenger dia dah pergi dah ke tujuan dia, so kereta je yang berlalu pergi. Macam itulah. So don't worry. So tak apa. Tak payah nak sumbat ke apa ke. Dia jangan kasih dia keluar, tak payah.
Actually guys, memang betul Dr. Azlin kata kita gelak tu memang betul. Tapi saya memang pernah jumpa pesakit yang sumbat. Okay, benda kat bawah supaya tak keluar. Okay, nombor 2 adalah saya pernah ada this couple yang the lady tu memang angkat kaki dia, husband dia akan pegangkan kaki dia on air. Okay, 15 minit minimum. Kalau husband dia kuat lagi, dia boleh tahan 30 minit. Okay, so kononnya tu nak bagi lagi dekat, nak bagi the root clear masuk terus ke rahim. So guys, don't do that. That's why kita bawa Dr. Azlin hari ni, okay, to teach you all, okay, untuk bincangkan juga mitos-mitos ni. How about mandi, Dr. Azlin? Lepas bersama, ada yang kata better not to mandi kan? And then some people say that tak boleh lah macam tu. So what do you think about that?
Boleh. Mandilah. rendam ke apa.
Okay, alright.
Okay. Apa lagi? Do we have any more myths? Ada tak lagi?
Kalau mitos kat Malaysia ni dia akan sejam lagi. So I think
Banyak ya.
Okay. We move on. Okay, guys, kita yang ada banyak soalan, sebenarnya kita ada banyak soalan, but we only have half an hour left and we tak cover actually a lot of different things. So let's answer all your questions the last 15 minutes, okay? Kita special slot, last 15 minutes, kita jawab everybody's question. We try to answer as many questions. Banyak sangat soalan. So we just move on into Doctor, when should couples consider going to the doctor? So, diorang dah try sekarang. Okay, diorang dah prepare. Sekarang diorang dah tahu, okay, ini fertility ni macam mana nak kira. Dah tahu myths apa semua. Okay, I tak follow that. And then sekarang tengah try. But how long should they macam try before,
sendiri.
Yes, sendiri before they get help? And actually what happens at the doctor bila diorang pergi?
So basically bila kita diagnose somebody with subfertility or masalah kesuburan ialah bila dia orang dah try 1 year, try 1 year with regular intercourse without any protection, maksudnya tak pakai kondom ke, tak makan pil ke apa, still tak berjaya, then diagnose with subfertility already. So dah should go and see a doctor. The earlier you see a doctor, the better. Tapi special circumstances untuk orang yang macam katalah dia jodoh dia datang lambat kan, dia dah umur dia dah banyak, so then after 6 months tak berjaya, should go and see a doctor. Ataupun orang tu kitaran haid dia tak teratur, dia tak pergi jumpa lagi awal-awal, tak ada preconceptional check, then after 6 months should go. Or people yang pernah ada operation, pernah buang cyst ke, pernah buang fibroid ke, sebab this might affect your kesuburan. So after 6 months you should try. You should see a doctor. So bila you datang, so obviously kita akan scan. So selalunya kita akan buat, kita panggil TVS. TVS tu is short for transvaginal scan. So sebab ada orang kadang-kadang dia pergi doktor tapi dia check daripada atas, dia scan daripada atas. So daripada atas is a bit limited actually dia punya visualization. So bila kita scan daripada dalam dan kita dapat dekat dengan rahim, so kita dapat check dalam rahim tu ada ketumbuhan ke, fibroid, ada ketumbuhan polip ke. So fibroid usually dia boleh jadi dalam otot rahim atau dalam rongga rahim. Polip tu dia terjadi dalam rongga rahim. So benda-benda ni boleh mengganggu kesuburan. Lepas tu yang paling penting kita nak check ovari. Sebab ovari, orang kena faham yang simpanan telur perempuan tu terhad. Kita, orang perempuan ni, dia dah dilahirkan dengan telur tu, dia punya quantity is only that much when you are a baby. So dia duduk dalam ovari kita diam-diam. So once kita start besarkan, kita start period, kita start besarkan telur. Dan cara telur ni membesar pula, dia bukan besar satu, keluar satu, besar satu, keluar satu, bukan. Dia macam, dia membesar satu kumpulan. So masa kita muda, kumpulan tu should like, in each ovary you should see like between 5 to 10, like more to like 10 plus 10 on the right, 10 on the left to 20. So 20 eggs ni your body akan choose one. So the chosen one tu je yang akan terus membesar, matang dan keluar proses ovulasi. So lagi 19 yang tak terpilih tu dia akan mati je. So you actually lose many eggs every cycle. So the same cycle repeats itself and your body tak boleh buat balik telur yang baru. So lama-lama habislah. Macam duit dalam wallet, dalam bank pun kalau you asyik spend je macam macam this MCO ni tak boleh kerja, you pakai simpanan you, so lama-lama habislah. Macam tu. So egg pun sama juga. So very important. So bila telur and orang dia tak dilahirkan dengan kuantiti yang sama. Ada orang memang dilahirkan sikit. So walaupun dia muda, dia punya telur akan habis lagi awal. So dia punya simpanan tu walaupun dia umur 30 kata, tapi simpanan dia macam orang umur 40. So very important for us to scan and tengok. And then the other one that we can do is actually to do blood test. So setiap telur yang ada dalam badan you tu, dia akan menghasilkan satu hormon ni, nama dia AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone. So kita ambil darah, lepas tu kita baca. So kalau you punya AMH tinggi, so telur you banyak lah. AMH rendah, telur you sikit. That means kita kena cepat-cepat buat fertility treatment. So that's on the female side. The male side pun kena check. Kalau boleh kena check serentak. Sebab kadang-kadang ada orang fokus je. 5 tahun je. Lepas tu after 5 tahun baru check husband. Kali rupanya husband dia memang ada problem. So kalau kita dah tahu daripada awal lagi better lah. So kalau husband senang lah. You just give the sperm sample, kita just check. But kita kena check. Bila kita check tu, the things that we look for in the sperm sample, satu ialah count, maksudnya quantity, berapa banyak sperm. So macam gambar slide tu, Yang atas tu banyak sperm dia. Yang bawah tu dia sikit. So sangat sparse sperm dia. Okay. So quantity. Yang kedua kita nak tengok morphology. Morphology yang slide gambar belah kanan tu, so tengok ada gambar sperm yang kerepot lah, sperm kepala besar lah, kepala dua lah, kita tak nak macam tu. Yang the third one, kita nak tengok motility. So motility penting bila kita ejaculate, sperm sampai kat dalam faraj je, vagina. So dia kena swim, laju-laju masuk rahim, masuk ke tube baru boleh jumpa dengan telur. Kalau dia duduk je kat dalam faraj tu, macam mana dia nak senyawakan telur? So kita tengok 3 benda ni, sangat penting.
Okay. Dr. Sandra, maybe you can go to treatment options sekarang. Okay, let's say ada problem. Dr. Sandra, you can take it away. Apa treatment options available?
Okay, treatment options kita akan tengok dulu. Okay, contoh kalau ada masalah period. Okay, macam tu kita tentukan dulu masalah period tu jadi sebab apa. Then kita buat blood test juga ya. Even dekat GP kita akan buat blood test anda dulu. Blood test pun dia tak boleh anda walk in terus lepas tu kita buat. Okay. So kita akan ada days dia. We will tell you when is it. Okay. Lepas tu kita ambil darah. So treatment dia dari sana. Okay. Contoh kalau dah try dah. Okay. Just say on your own. You dah try dah. Scan adalah normal. Hormon semua everything okay. Then bila kita refer ke pakar. Okay, kepada pakar fertility, dari sana biasanya ada IUI ataupun IVF. Okay, so IUI dengan IVF ni dia memang ada perbezaan dia lah. Alright, kalau IUI tu kira tu kita mengambil sperma, kita senang kata lah, tak payah kita terlalu deep, kita inject dekat dengan rahim. Nak cepatkan
masuk
proses
dalam
dia.
Rahim. Dia macam ikut
masuk ke dalam rahim.
Macam naik bus express macam tu. Macam
naik
apa
bus
tu?
express.
Bullet train macam tu.
Okay, IVF pula, so kita ambil telur, kita ambil sperma, kita senyawakan kat luar. Okay, lepas tu dia ada step-step dia. Okay, then kita akan ambil, kita kata embrio lah, bila dia dah terbentuk macam tu, kita akan ambil, kita masukkan balik ke dalam rahim tu, kita tempelkan balik kat situ. Okay, so IUI atau IVF dia akan depends on your fertility doctor juga. Dia ada banyak-banyak faktor dia, betul tak Dr. Azlin?
Yes. Okay. So bila you datang, kita akan tengok dari segi dari segi faktor umur, paling penting umur wanita lah. So because lagi banyak umur dia, so dia punya simpanan telur dah berkurang, kualiti telur dia berkurang. So kita nak treatment yang bagi pregnancy rate yang lagi tinggi lah. So kalau untuk IUI first kena
What is IUI?
Orang
IUI.
IUI is intrauterine insemination. Okay, which means intra dalam uterine rahim inseminasi. So maksudnya kita ambil sperm, kita memang masukkan straw sampai dalam rahim dan kita lepaskan sperm tu ke dalam rahim lah. So first kita kena besarkan telur sebab selalunya macam I kata tadi secara semula. Jadi satu je telur yang membesar setiap bulan. So untuk kita punya chances of treatment tu berjaya, so kita akan bagi ubat, sama ada ubat makan ataupun injection supaya lebih daripada satu telur membesar lah. So kita selalu target dalam 3 ke 4 telur membesar. Tapi tak boleh banyak sangat juga. Sebab you kena faham bila kita release sperm kat dalam rahim tu, dan sperm tu pergi senyawakan telur. Bayangkan ada 10 telur. 10 senyawa, 10 melekat kat rahim. So nanti jadi anak kucing pula. Tak boleh lah. So bila dia terlalu banyak, kita tak boleh buat IUI. So kita kena bagi ubat berpada-pada supaya tak terlalu banyak telur tu membesar. So semua bagi ubat nak start membesarkan telur semua start dengan kitaran haid. So kitaran haid hari kedua, hari ketiga masa you still bleeding tu, doktor akan start bagi ubat. Dan doktor akan monitor pembesaran telur tu sampai telur tu matang. So dan doktor kata okey telur dah matang dan doktor akan bagi satu injection kita panggil trigger. So trigger ni akan menyebabkan telur tu pecah dan kita harap dapat masuk dalam tube lah. Dalam tube, fallopian tube. Dan masa hari ovulasi tu kita akan ambil sperm, kita akan proses dia dan kita akan masukkan ke dalam rahim macam dalam video klip ni lah. So macam you bayangkan kiranya patient sedar, macam nak buat pap smear macam tu, doktor akan masukkan speculum kita panggil daripada faraj supaya kita nampak pintu rahim. So kan akan masukkan macam straw sampai dalam rongga rahim dan lepaskan sperm kat situ. So sperm tu dia lagi dekat nak pergi dekat dalam tube terus dan baru lagi senang nak jumpa dengan telur. So untuk IUI obviously perlu tube yang tak block lah. perlu tube yang berfungsi. So kena buat x-ray dulu, check tube you okey ke tak. So tube tak boleh tengok kat scan. Macam saya kata tadi, kita scan TBS boleh nampak rahim dengan boleh nampak ovari saja. Kalau nak check tube, kita kena buat x-ray. So kena pergi jabatan x-ray, selalunya doktor refer pada hospital dan dia akan buat HSG ni, hysterosalpingogram, HSG untuk check tube. So tube kena okey, dan sperm kena okey. Sebab katalah orang tu sperm dia sikit, bila kita proses, tinggallah terkontang-kanting berapa ekor sperm dia, tak boleh lah. So you need a lot of sperm to get into the tube. So 2 yang penting. Yang ketiga, kalau macam bila you dah lepaskan sperm tu, you tak boleh guarantee telur dengan sperm tu berjumpa. Okay? Sebab bila kita scan, kita nampak telur tu dalam ovari. So ovari dengan tube you tak bersambung tau. Dia bukan macam factory line, okay telur jadi ready besar masuk dalam tube. Dia tak, dia ovari dengan telur tu dia tak bersambung. Tugas tube, ovari dengan telur pula. Ovari dengan tube tu tak bersambung. So tube tu kena catch the egg. So kalau dia tak dapat catch, then bila sperm dah sampai kat situ tak adalah telur kat dalam. So untuk orang yang simpanan telur, so sebab itu bila kita buat IUI, peratus pregnancy kita rendah, 15%. Which means kalau orang 10 orang buat IUI, pada hari tu seorang je yang akan pregnant. Seorang atau 2, macam tu. So very low. So untuk orang yang simpanan telur yang rendah, untuk orang yang umur dia dah banyak, so kita tak sesuai lah. Kita nak cepat pregnant, always with IVF.
Okay.
Kalau IVF pula is in vitro fertilization. So in dalam, vitro is dalam tabung uji. Okay. Fertilization kita senyawakan. Which means telur dengan sperm jumpa kat luar badan. Dalam petri dish. Okay. Bukan dekat dalam badan kita. So it involves about 5 steps. So first kita bagi ubat untuk besarkan telur. So untuk IVF kita boleh besarkan sebanyak telur yang kita nak lah basically. Okay. So lagi banyak telur, lagi tinggi chances. So untuk besarkan telur banyak-banyak, so kita kena bagi injection. So gambar 1 tu stimulation of ovaries, tapi bukanlah makan pil, dia memang ubat injection. Sebabnya kita bagi ubat hormon. Sebab dalam badan you dah ada hormon tu, tapi hormon tu boleh besarkan 1 telur je. So untuk besarkan banyak-banyak telur, dan kena bagi hormon tu. And hormon tu datang dalam bentuk injection dan only active for 1 day. So unfortunately memang IVF involve daily injection lah. Okay. So sebab macam kita tadi, kalau secara semula jadi, 1 telur besar, yang lain mati. So rugilah. So IVF is actually rescuing all these telur yang destined to mati. So ada orang tanya, kalau saya buat IVF, cepatlah telur saya habis doktor, nanti saya menopause awal ke? Tak. Sebabnya IVF hanya membesarkan telur yang ada pada bulan tu. So, so kita monitor, lepas telur tu dah cukup besar, kita bawa keluar telur tu dari badan. So this is a minor procedure lah, macam operation tapi tak ada belah-belah ke apa, tak ada. So just a needle will go through your vagina into your ovary and sucking out all the eggs. Okay. So bila telur ni dah keluar, kita akan ambil 1 sperm dan kita injekkan telur terus ke dalam telur. So they definitely meet. Kalau IUI kita tak tahu dia jumpa ke tak. Tapi kalau IVF kita dah jumpakan dia. Cumanya kita jumpakan dia tapi kita tak boleh paksa dia senyawa. So kalau dia senyawa, baru dia berkembang dan baru dia matang. So embryo maturation tu, nombor 4 tu dalam lab, dalam incubator, dalam rahim tiruan. So you kalau tengok video dia very fascinating sebab dia akan bercambah dengan cepat lah. Okay, so usually after 3 days or 5 days, baru kita ambil embryo ni dan masukkan balik ke dalam rahim. Kita panggil embryo transfer. So dia macam proses IUI juga. So you sedar, kita masukkan tube dalam rahim dan kita lepaskan embrio tu. So kita cuma boleh hantar je embrio tu dalam rahim tapi kita tak boleh paksa dia lekat. Sebab tu IVF tak 100%. Okay. IVF tak 100%. So pregnancy rate is around 50%. So okay. So much better than IUI. 15 versus 50.
IUI is 15 IUI is 15.
15. IVF is 50, 50. So untuk orang yang memang telur dah habis, untuk orang yang umur dah ni, so kita terus terus buat IVF. Atau untuk orang yang tube dia block, memang tak boleh buat IUI lah. Ataupun untuk orang yang sperm dia tak boleh berenang ke, sperm dia sangat kurang, dan perlu kita yang bawa sperm dan masukkan ke dalam telur.
Okay, doktor, ini soalan penting, mesti semua orang nak tahu participant kita. Price, harga, IUI and IVF. Kita orang Malaysia mesti everything price.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sebab all stimulation involves the hormones. So when the hormones a lot is being used, so the cost is high. So so IUI dengan IVF, the cost is so much different. Usually IUI most places dalam 1,500 to 1,000 macam tu lah, to 2,000. Whereas IVF is in the range of 16 to 18,000. Sebabnya hormon yang I cakap kena bagi hari-hari tu is like half of the cost tu is just the hormone. And then bila kan proses keluarkan telur is an operation, lepas tu nak handle telur, nak handle sperm, they are all very delicate, so kena persekitaran yang terkawal, kena ni, so that's why the cost is high.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Dr. Sandra, my co-moderator, maybe you can take over for this. Next question is talking about why couples don't seek help. Kenapa couples ni susah nak pergi jumpa doktor? What do couples go through bila dorang susah nak conceive baby and things like that? Maybe both of you can share your experience with patients. Unfortunately, we only have a few more minutes left because then we kena jawab soalan. So as fast as you guys can, then we can go to.
Cakap macam train dah I.
Okay, so most of the time saya rasa lebih banyak tu GP kami lihat kenapa patients tak masuk ya. Saya pernah tengok 14 tahun, 16 tahun tak pernah check up. Satu, macam cost tadi. Okay, mereka tak tahu actually pre-check up cost dan tak berani nak tanya sebab takut diorang tak boleh afford then they feel bad. Itu satu. Okay. Nombor dua, awal tadi tu kita kata, I think Dr. Azli mention that lelaki pun kena check juga. Jangan lepas 5 tahun, 6 tahun, okay, and then only they get to know, okay, which is, I actually have a patient like that. He divorced the wife, okay, and then she remarried and she has 3 children now. And then he remarried and he doesn't have children. Only then he knows that he is the problematic one. So what was the problem is that he refused to come in for a checkup with the wife. Okay, so most of the time adalah jujur kita kata kita Malaysians stigma masyarakat. Okay, alright, aku lelaki, tak mungkin aku ada masalah. It's always because you see, kita tengok proses IVF, IUI tadi semua, the sperma mungkin bermasalah, ovum ataupun fallopian tube mungkin bermasalah, tapi yang ambil semua prosedur tu adalah wanita. So misconception, di mana kat sinilah kita kena tingkatkan kita punya awareness kepada masyarakat. First of all, fertility tu husband and wife, okay. Lepas tu, dua-dua orang kena pergi check. Support tu untuk dua-dua orang kena ada. And then cost-wise, okay. Sometimes I tell my patient, duit tu, now we are at a difficult situation lah. But on a normal basis tu, duit tu boleh cari lain, okay. Tapi life, kita punya, usually kita kahwin tu semua nak zuriat kan, betul tak? Kalau tak, we can live in jugalah, okay. So these are the few things that cause couples to not seek treatment juga. How about Dr. Azlin, from your side, bila patient datang to see you for a consult, okay, after a referral, why do they not proceed dengan any treatment?
First and foremost memang cost factor lah, cost factor. Kadang-kadang ada patient memang dia dah pergi check, lepas tu dia dah memang diberitahu perlu IVF, then because of the cost factor, then dia shelf the idea, dia tak jadi buat apa-apa. Lepas tu like 10 years later, like when the wife is like 40 years old already, baru dia, when you advance in age, unfortunately that's when you have the money. But unfortunately when your bank balance go up, your egg balance goes down. So as you age, your egg goes down. So cost factor is always a problem. Kalau dia kata okay, cost, dia pergi government, because kita pun limited budget in the government sector, so IVF or fertility treatment is like macam priority dia a bit on the lower side lah. So the movement,
but they still have to fork out juga kan, they still have to come up with some amount of money juga in the government, right? Correct. Okay, so since we have limited time, I think there's an important topic ataupun aspek lah dari benda ni yang saya nak sentuh sikit juga, sebab rasanya banyak yang go through benda ni, okay. Mental health aspect lah, Dr. Azlin, from this TTC. Okay, so TTC ni trying to conceive is a very popular word kita pakai, TTC, okay, alright. Now, kalau kita lihat, okay, first of all, mental health aspect ni, okay, ramai couples, terutamanya wanita yang mengalami tekanan emosi, okay. Satu adalah dari sebelum TTC ni, okay, baru kahwin tu ramai yang dah tanya, okay, bila tak ada lagi ke, and this and that. So yang ni kita kena stop, okay, kita sebagai perempuan pun first of all kita yang kena stop dulu, Okay, tanya perempuan yang lain. Okay, and then educate the others lah. Okay. Nombor 2 adalah bila mereka mendapatkan fertility treatment. Okay, ramai wanita yang go through hormonal changes. Okay, kalau kita tengok lah, okay, semua pun inseminasi, okay, masuk balik kat wanita. Okay, dia terpaksa melalui something like operation walaupun tak bedah badan. Okay, benda ni semua akan mengganggu. Injection untuk nak yang matangkan ovum tu juga few days of injection, right Dr. Azlin? Almost 14 days
10 to 12
maybe.
days lah, lama.
10 to 12 days.
Lama.
So lama. Dia nak inject sendiri, husband dia tak nak tengok jarum, dia tak berani nak inject sendiri. So all these things. Then there is no support. Okay, so from this part saya rasa spouse dengan family. Okay, sebab patient ni bila dia jumpa fertility specialist jauh, KL, Penang macam tu, and then dia akan jumpa untuk dia punya stress semua doktor dia yang berdekatan. Okay, which is usually happens to be the GP. Okay, so dekat sini ni saya nak tekankan is best that the spouse mesti ada lah, alright, dekat sebelah dia untuk along the whole way. Nombor 2 adalah family members. Okay, nombor 3 adalah jika benda tu betul-betul mengganggu anda, apa yang kita boleh buat? Contoh, maybe take some time off from work. Okay, there are a lot of people who are doing this TTC tapi end of the day develop anxiety, they develop depression, hari yang nak retrieve tu, hari yang nak buat urine test tu yang positif lepas 14 days lepas itu, you know. So this is one part of it. Before is also they have a problem.
Yeah, and sekarang everybody working from home juga, and then the working life now pasal MCO and everything, everybody's working all the time. Everybody
tak ada boundary tak ada boundary.
Tak ada boundary. So yeah, I completely understand Dr. Sandra. Let's Dr. Azlin, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so basically memang IVF is very stressful. First, financial part dah memang stressful. So with the amount like money you invest, obviously you nak berjaya lah. But then the fact that you cannot control the outcome, and then the pregnancy rate pun at best macam around 50%. So people memang get stressful. So most fertility center dia ada counselor. So we call it mind body fertility. Maksudnya kita as you go through the treatment, kita boleh bagi you jumpa with a counselor or life coach yang akan ajar you how to manage the stress lah, how to manage the stress. So it's very important.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Sandra. Thank you, Dr. Azlin. Okay, let's move on to questions. A lot of questions, banyak ni. Okay, first is from Nitya Sagar. She says, good evening. I had a miscarriage due to my ovum size smaller than normal size. Is that because I gained weight and had menstrual problem? What should I do to increase ovum size?
Ovum size?
Yeah, egg size. I'm reducing my weight now.
Yeah, okay. So basically kalau you dah pregnant, that means tak kisahlah you punya ovum size smaller ke tak, which means when you had a pregnancy, that means you have already ovulated. Okay, so tapi you had a miscarriage, there are many factors. One most usually is because the embryo that resulted from the fertilization, maksudnya telur bila dengan sperm jumpa, dia tak semestinya bila dia jadi baby tu tak semestinya sihat. Okay, that's why people get miscarriage. So when the egg and the sperm meet, there's fusion of DNA. So DNA ni yang bawa information supaya anak kita ikutlah muka kita, rambut panjang, rambut kerinting ke rambut lurus, that kind of thing. So it's called, the DNA is called chromosome. So telur ada 23 kromosom, sperm ada 23 kromosom. When they meet, the embryo has to be 46 in chromosome lah, 23 pairs. So actually very susah to dapat this 23 pairs. So sometimes it becomes mismatched or tak balance, then that's when you get a miscarriage. Okay, so that is one thing. Secondly, yes, weight plays a very important role. So bila you are overweight, you are obese, your chances of miscarriage is higher. People with like kata telur tak matang and weight gain weight obese lah basically. So it's a condition that may be called PCOS, a specific condition. So they have higher risk of miscarriage. So they have to have certain follow up dengan doktor. Kadang-kadang kena makan extra ubat, macam orang PCOS kena makan ubat called metformin. Sometimes kena bagi hormone to support the pregnancy. So yes, the first step is memang to lose the weight lah.
Okay. Another question, next question from Hani Dayana Ismail. She says, "Hi doctor, period saya keluar sikit saja. On my last cycle, I had prolonged heavy menses up to 21 days. But this current cycle hanya sedikit saja throughout my menses. Is that normal?"
That's not normal. So 21 days of bleeding is abnormal. So first kena rule out pregnancy sebab pregnancy miscarriage can cause that. Second, kena rule out anything that grows inside the womb like a polyp, it can cause heavy menses. Thirdly, macam hormonal disturbance lah, imbalance. So untuk kitaran haid yang normal, so telur you kena membesar. So masa telur you membesar or ovum you membesar, dini rahim akan menebal. So then ovulasi berlaku, kalau tak ada pregnancy, telur ni akan bagi signal kat rahim untuk flow, untuk luruh. So dia shed dan dinding rahim tu yang akan jadi period. So kena ada ovulasi baru dinding rahim shed the whole dan you ada period flow yang normal. So kalau you punya period tu very light spotting aja, maksudnya tak ada signal daripada telur untuk dinding rahim tu shed properly, which means that likelihood that you didn't ovulate that cycle. So it has to be like good flow every month, then that means your ovulation is occurring every month. Tapi katalah dia alternate between spotting and very heavy prolonged flow, that means your egg tak grow properly. Tak ada ovulation every month. So you need to go see a doctor.
Okay. Next question from Shana. She says, "Hi doctor, saya dah buat IVF and first ET failed. What will be the next step and what is the percentage of success for second ET? Since my husband's sperm count is low, can I get pregnant without IVF?" First of all, what is ET, doctor?
ET is embryo transfer. That's when you get the embryo and put back into the womb.
Okay.
Okay. So bila you buat IVF, macam kita tadi, dia akan ada banyak-banyak telur yang dihasilkan pada satu kitaran IVF tu lah. So dia akan ada, most of the time dia ada a few embryo. So selalunya kita tak masukkan semua embryo tu dalam transfer tu, dalam ET tu. So kita akan masukkan satu atau dua. So kalau dia ada balance embryo yang beku, then dia boleh buat, kita panggil frozen embryo transfer, FET. So dia boleh try lagi. So tapi kalau dia tak ada embryo yang disimpan, unfortunately then dia kena repeat the IVF lah. So kalau usually doktor bila tengok kenapa transfer tu tak berjaya, then dia akan tengoklah apa yang perlu penambahbaikan. So every cycle tu is different. Doktor akan try guna ubat lain, or prepare the womb macam lain, or increase the hormone support, macam tu lah. So you can go for frozen embryo transfer, FET kalau ada extra embryo. Kalau tak ada embryo, then you have to repeat. So when they repeat another IVF cycle, that's when doktor boleh decide to guna ubat lain ke, guna dos lain ke, guna cara bagi ubat, kita panggil protokol, guna protokol lain ke, macam tu. So boleh ke dia pregnant secara natural? Actually kalau sperm sangat kurang, sangat susah nak pregnant secara natural. Bukanlah nak kata tak boleh, impossible. So kalau rezeki nak datang tu datang je, tapi we don't know whether it can happen or not. So and then your age will continue to increase and then your fertility will decline. So usually with the sperm problem, bila doktor kata perlu injection of sperm into telur, then likely you have to repeat your IVF.
Okay. I think we have a lot more question. Okay, next one is kejap. Okay, yang badan panas. I think we have a question of badan panas. Where is the badan panas? Okay, from Raghavan S. He says, "Hi doctor. Hearing that doctor saying body temperature does affect the sperm, but by nature, me and my husband are badan panas. How we should overcome this, that our body temperature will not impact the process of getting pregnant?"
Okay, macam nak cakap Yok Melek.
Badan panas.
Okay, alright. Now, you see, this one is something very common lah, macam angin lah. Okay, badan panas, generally you feel like your body is warm, okay? Tapi kalau you guys check your temperature, sekarang dengan COVID, you check your temperature everywhere kan? Mesti you all tak demam, okay? So you feel like you're warm, but when your normal temperature tu masih normal, okay, 31.7, okay, 31, 36.5 macam tu, you rasa panas tapi sebenarnya you tak ada. So benda ni macam panas dalam. Your body
ada own regulatory mechanism to keep your temperature at certain. Dia tak boleh terlalu panas. Sebab tu orang bila demam, temperature dia naik, dia boleh collapse. When it's too hot tak boleh. So Bila you rasa badan panas, tak semestinya core body temperature you panas lah, tak semestinya.
Yes, okay, correct. Okay, next question. Can we get the next question slide? And Dr. Sandra, maybe you can take control of these questions. What is the next question? Okay.
Okay, this is from Hana. Hai, salam sejahtera doktor. Saya dah TTC 6 tahun. Alhamdulillah saya dan suami tidak ada masalah kesuburan, tapi pada tahun 2017 saya diagnose dengan antibody anti-sperma. Okay, adakah saya boleh conceive secara natural atau hanya mampu conceive dengan rawatan IVF? Saya pernah cuba rawatan IUI sebanyak 2 kali tapi masih gagal.
Okay, so this is so basically antibody kepada pada sperm ni is for fertility specialist dia tak ada macam like okay you have antibody against your sperm, you have to this, tak ada. Sebab dia macam mana nak kata kita punya medical practice is based on evidence. Maksudnya orang buat research dan kita follow what they suggest. So basically yang sperm antibody ni dia tak stronghold kata okay you kena treat this. Tapi katalah you dah try IUI 2 kali, that means bila you check, you kata sperm okay, tube okay, rahim okay, tapi kita punya assessment to the patient tu is very limited. Banyak lagi benda yang kita tak tahu. Because as we do research, we know things more often. So macam kita tadi, bila you buat IUI, you letak sperm dalam rahim tu, you tak tahu pun telur dengan sperm tu dapat jumpa ke tak, you don't know. Okay, so usually after 3 attempt of IUI still tak berjaya, you are encouraged to do IVF. Sebab bila you buat IVF, telur you keluar daripada badan. Dan kita boleh assess the telur punya quality. Kita boleh tengok bawah mikroskop telur tu okey ke tak. Sebab sperm memang kita boleh tengok sebab dia ejaculate kita boleh tengok. But telur dalam badan kita tak boleh assess. Telur bila dah keluar, bila kita extract from IVF baru kita tahu. Kita tahu telur dia sebenarnya nampak tak normal lah. The quality is really bad. The appearance so bad. Tu kita buat IVF baru kita tahu. And then bila kita buat IVF, bila kita masukkan sperm dalam telur tu dan kita baru tahu dia kadang-kadang fertilization doesn't happen or dia fertilize but they don't develop good embryos. So IVF tu bukan hanya treatment tapi it's actually an assessment tool. Macam tu.
Okay. Can we have the next question? Dr. Sandra?
Okay, just give me a second. Jessie M. Hi doctors, I have had 3 miscarriages and 2 DNC done. The question is, will having miscarriage and performing DNC several times reduces the chances of getting pregnant? Also, my first and only surviving child was born premature at 35 weeks. Could that actually mean that I have a weak womb since I cannot carry full term? And 3 consecutive miscarriages that followed after that.
Okay. So when you have 3 miscarriage that occurs consecutively, so kita dah ada special diagnosis, it's called recurrent miscarriage. So recurrent miscarriage is a true diagnosis, so it needs further investigation lah. Bukan nak kata you punya rahim tak kuat, dia ada macam benda. First kita kena tengok dari segi genetik, embryo tu normal ke tak. So bila you go for DNC, they send whatever they come up from the womb, dia boleh send for genetic testing. They can test the husband, they can test the wife, tengok dia punya chromosome, the DNA is in the correct position or not. Then dia kena tengok whether the body is actually rejecting the baby. Sebab bila embryo tu terjadi dalam badan, dia ada half daripada lady, daripada isteri, half daripada wife, daripada husband, the sperm. So sometimes the body or the wife, the body of the wife feels that the sperm part is like foreign, it's like infection. So they make antibody to attack the pregnancy. Then you end up with the miscarriage. So there's some blood tests that can be done. Okay. Sometimes infection also can cause recurrent miscarriage. So you need to check whether you have infection or not. And then ada juga orang yang dalam rahim tu dari dikira infection lah. So it's not easy to bagi pendapat why you're having this, but the take home message is you need to go and do all these tests to check why you're having recurrent miscarriages.
Okay. Maybe I think we have maybe one more last question. Yeah, so just the last one, and then we can wrap up the session because kita dah actually overtime dah. Tapi tak apa, because Dr. Azlin has a lot of questions to answer, and I will still have a lot of people still listening in. Dr. Sandra?
Okay, I think shall we go for a question from Shana? What will the advice be?
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Did we do that? Okay, can we take the COVID vaccine during an IVF cycle?
Okay. So basically this one macam soalan cepu mas ke soalan panas, susah sikit nak jawab. Okay, because the COVID vaccine is very new in the market. So untuk sejenis ubat atau vaksin, usually when they are developing, they have to follow through, they have to observe for 10 years before they release it in the market. But because it's a pandemic, so you need that vaccine very quickly. So the production is very fast. Then the research and the observation is very fast. So at the moment, banyak country yang dah vaccinate banyak patient like China ke US ke apa, kata tak ada problem at all. Boleh buat. Okay. Tapi vaccination, dia ada, so when you are doing IVF, when you are doing you're doing the stimulation, you're taking the egg out, then obviously you want a pregnancy. So sekarang ni dekat negara kita kata you can receive the vaccine after 14 weeks. So obviously kalau you injection then you transfer your embryo, obviously you know the virus, the vaccine ada dalam your body and then your baby belum 14 weeks lagi. So itu yang kita tak tahulah. So basically sekarang ni my patient, I would advise you can proceed with your IVF. We collect the embryo, the egg, then we freeze the embryo. Then you complete your vaccine and then kita transfer, buat frozen embryo transfer. You can do that. Having said that, kalau you terfikir katalah orang tu ambil vaksin hari ni, lepas tu 2 weeks later dia tahu dia pregnant. So sama lah juga. So far macam you kata all the large authority macam US ke UK ke kata boleh je. You tak payah check whether you pregnant ke tak sebelum you dapat the vaccine, which means that you know, theoretically the vaccine is fine, dia tak affect the fetus. But usually kita tak tahu 10 years down the line. So 10 years down the line something might happen dan you kata oh it's related to vaccine. So sekarang doktor tak boleh nak comment sebab doktor mana tahu apa akan jadi in 10 years time. So it's a very very difficult to decide. But having said that, people yang pregnant, they get COVID is really very bad. They would more of them would need ventilator,
pernafasan,
ventilation, ICU admission, higher death rate. So I would strongly suggest, bila you dapat je
vaksin tu,
vaccinate, you go vaccinate.
Ambil je.
Sebab ada orang dia ada defer dia punya vaksin to get to do their IVF whatever, then tak tahu bila dia akan dapat dia punya vaccination.
Okay.
So kita ada backup plan lah, kita boleh buat dia frozen macam tu. Okay, good lah. At least there is a. Okay, so we have another one.
Maybe
from
the last question.
The last, okay, let's make it the last one.
Last. Tak ada masa dah.
Okay, I think let's make it the last. Okay, from Nicole, evening doctor, I have regular period every month. Tapi susah nak tahu bila ialah ovulation date. For example, I tak ada sign of thick discharge this month. We tried according to my calendar and calculator, but not sure how accurate it is. Tried daily temperature, but tiap-tiap hari tak sama. Any other way to check if I'm ovulating? Guna ovulation predictor kit every day ke during fertility window? Any other tips? Thank you.
Yes, guna OPK, ovulation prediction kit. Sebab nak guna discharge, your interpretation with others, like how thick is the discharge? How thick it has to be thick? What is the color? It's very subjective to every people, so not very good. So body temperature is very subtle increase and then it's very difficult. Kalau macam you memang tidur tak ada aircon malam tu, memang cuaca panas dan your body panas dan you tak tahulah bila you ovulate, it's not a good idea. Ovulation period is a better ni. So kalau you regular, your period is regular, so when your fertility window is there, macam I kira tadi kan, then you buat the OPK. Daily sampai you hit the positive, which is 2 lines. So OPK ni dia macam urine test je, macam pregnancy test tu, you celup je. Then you tengok dia ada 2 line. Kalau 2 line, then you terus get busy 3 days in a row.
Tapi kalau ikut saya, kalau Dr. Sandra, this is Dr. Azlin beritahu. Okay, Dr. Sandra beritahu, korang buat je lah. See, because bila soalan tu macam tu you all tanya, okay, a lot of you have that kind of questions and depend on OPK. So the thing that we can see from here is stress, mental stress. Okay, so bila ada stress, stress, then everything else is haywire. Satgi hang predict tu, lepas tu ovulation kit OPK tu tak naik, aku tak nak buat dengan you lah, abang tidur bilik asing lah. So that's what we don't want also, okay? Sebab it's important for you to have a healthy marriage juga, okay? So don't depend too much on all these things, suhu, you know, OPK, lepas tu your discharge and everything, okay? Just get busy.
Get busy.
Right? With no stress, okay? Because it's very important to be stress-free as well.
Okay. Dr. Sandra, final thoughts? Dr. Azlin, final thoughts?
Okay. Alright, final thoughts. Okay, now untuk topik ni, we are very happy to bring you this topic sebab kita nak anda semua lebih aware that kita nak tu fertility suami dengan isteri check bersama-sama. Nombor 2, take home message. Jangan tunggu terlalu lama untuk check. Okay, alright. Kepada yang ada masalah kesihatan dah sebelum ni, check awal-awal. Okay, kepada yang biasa baru kahwin, mungkin setahun. PJJ what maybe a little bit longer. Tapi also your lifestyle environment sangat penting. Jangan duk fokus sangat ubat je ataupun prosedur je macam tu. Dia kena seimbang jugalah macam Dr. Azlin ajar tadi.
Okay.
Alright?
Dr. Azlin?
Yes. So yang paling penting nak drive the message home ialah simpanan telur perempuan tu berkurangan mengikut umur. So the longer you wait, the later you seek treatment, your chances of pregnancy will be lower. Then the risk of miscarriage pun go high. So kita tak ada ubat, any treatment whatsoever, if you go all around the world pun, the most advanced country pun tak ada. Once telur habis. You miss the boat. So lagi awal, lagi better.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Azlin. Thank you so much, Dr. Sandra, for joining us today on this webinar. Guys, if you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star review at the end of the webinar. And also, please don't forget to join us for our next webinar, which is Mula Gunakan Google Ads on Tuesday, 13 July at 11 in the morning, which will be hosted by Dino. So that is also an interesting thing. Please keep joining us on link.astro1.com. Follow us on all our social media platforms. Follow Dr. Sandra dekat TikTok. Follow Sophia Fertility Center dekat Instagram.
Follow Dr. Azlin.
Follow Dr. Azlin.
Can DM me kalau tak sempat je soalan tak dijawab. Can DM me. I will try to jawab.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dishan Kumar. We will see you in the next session because me and Dr. Sandra will be doing a few different topics every month. So please watch this space. So thank you so much and good night, guys. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye. You guys have to like us. Only then I and Dishan can go ahead. Thank you, Dishan. Good night. Thank you, Dr. Azlin, for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good.